Dr. Francisco José Luis. I'm Portuguese by origin. I'm a Luxembourgish citizen. I live pretty much a bit everywhere in Europe. Yeah, now I'm here on visit in Tehran after having visited Karbala al-Muqaddasa. I converted to Tashayyu in 2007 on the birthday of Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. It was the result of a long process that started when I was 11 years old. What I can say is, for example, is that when I was 11 years old, we had a book in religious education in Luxembourg, because Luxembourg is a Catholic country. And so once or twice a week, we have religious education in schools. And in the book for religious education, there was a chapter on Islam. And there's this painting by Sultan Muhammad, who was a Safavid painter, as an illustration of the Miraj of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I was fascinated by it. I actually literally fell in love with that painting. And I was asking myself two important questions, which is, who is this man that God loves so much that he draws him, towards himself? That's one thing. The second thing is, who is this man who actually inspired a civilization that created such a beautiful piece of art? So from the beginning, I entered Islam through the gate of spirituality and art. What's interesting is that in those days, I was doing this PhD at the University of London on Sikhism. So I was living among Sikhs. I was wearing a turban, so on and so forth. And of course, you can imagine that for a traditional Portuguese family, it's a bit shocking, right? So when I told them that, okay, I've decided to become Muslim, the first thing they told me is like, are you going to remove the turban, mate? Are you going to cut your hair? And I was like, yes. And they're like, alhamdulillah. So, but I think that they saw also a certain peace that I got in my heart, thanks to the Masumin. And my parents are wonderful people. They're very respectful. Whenever I'm home to see my parents, they buy halal meats. They make sure that the food is tahir. They don't drink alcohol around me. And I've never asked them to do these things, but out of respect, they do that. And I have wonderful parents. Alhamdulillah, I've been really blessed with wonderful parents. And this is unfortunately not the case of a lot of converts. But I think because, I'm Portuguese, our culture does have an Islamic element to it. So I think that helped a lot in terms of integrating with my family and not having conflicts at home. I'm not saying that it's always easy, because there are always certain issues that might cause some questions. But my parents, on the whole, have been very accepting and very very tolerant of my choices. Yeah. And in fact, this has drawn my other brothers to become more religious. So two of my brothers have become more devout in their own Catholic faith. So on the whole, it was a positive thing, I think. And one of the things that really attracted me to the Islam of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam is the fact that Islam is not a religion, it's a holistic path that takes into account all of the aspects of the human, of the human dimension. It's really the ideal of the insan kamil, the fact that we have spiritual needs, we have emotional needs, we have material needs, we also have political, social, economical, and political needs as well. So all of this is taken into account, and there's no real separation. That's what I really loved about Tashayyu. And of course, I grew up in a period where, I grew up in the 80s, so it was really impossible not to see Sayyid Khomeini on television. And what really was, even as a teenager, I was really impressed by one thing, which is these young Iranian boys choosing to volunteer to fight, to defend their country. I was really, I really respected that a lot. And there's a beautiful dimension about that. These young men who bled the the blood of their hearts to save their country in a critical situation, whatever political ideology we might be partaking in or of, these are people that one should deeply respect, and that sort of spirit was instilled to them because of this of centuries of culture of Azadari that they had in them. So that is something else that was really led me to have a growing interest into Tashayu. So I started reading more and more books about it, while at the same time I was reading about other religions as well. There's a huge problem that people don't understand. Islamophobia did not come because of 9/11. Islamophobia was already there. It's actually, Islamophobia is just another form of the mental disease that the modern West has, because it's part and parcel of the way it self-identifies itself. What do I mean by that? Before the French Revolution and before the coming of modernity on the world scene, there was no such thing as the West. What you had was Christendom, the Christian world, that happened to be mostly in Western Europe, but it was called Christendom. The French Revolution really gave a mortal blow to the Catholic Church. It disturbed a certain cosmic order of things. And after that, gradually what you have is a new identity that is being shaped in the West. And of course, the problem is there are, culturally speaking, no commonalities whatsoever between a person living in Sicily and a person living in Norway. These are completely different people, ethnically, linguistically, religiously, and culturally. So the elites, the Western elites, in terms of defining the new Western identity, instead of giving a definition that was a positive one. For example, when you define an identity, you say that A equals X, Y, Z, and so on and so forth. They define it differently. They say that the West is not the other, and the other is the Oriental. It's the Oriental world. So the West defines itself always in opposition to an Oriental other. I mean, this is something that Edward Said has really looked into in his Orientalism. So the West constructs itself, and it's a construct. It's not a reality. It's a complete construct. The West constructs itself as being, and conceives itself as being rational, whereas it sees the East as emotional. It sees itself as scientific, whereas it sees the West, the East, as mystical. It sees itself as progressive, and sees the East as backwards, and so on and so forth. And it sees itself as really hyper masculine. It sees the East as hyper feminine or effeminate, and it sees itself as really honest and straightforward. It sees the East as crooked, treacherous, and dishonest, inherently dishonest. We have not been careful enough into observing the whole phenomenon of Islamophobia, and we just think it's a recent thing because of 9/11. And I said before, it's something that has deep roots within the Western narrative. I think one of the most important things to do is, first of all, to challenge the narrative of Western identity. Is to deconstruct the very notion of the West. I'm a big believer in the Mediterranean identity. I'm a Mediterranean. This is my culture. I have more in common with Turkish people and Lebanese people and Egyptian people and Syrian people than I will ever have with French people, German people, or English people, because we just share a same love for family. We share a same love for a certain ideal of virility, of manliness. We have a specific notion of hospitality. We share this as a people of the Mediterranean. We're hospitable people. So I think the first thing to do is to deconstruct the whole notion of the West. And that takes a certain intellectual courage and a certain intellectual competence that I really wish to see grow in the next few years. We just need to re-establish this link with the divine in the way we conceive education, in the way we conceive gender relations, in the way we conceive the rights of workers, in the way we conceive the architecture of our cities. And the thing is that as long as we have not understood that there is this disease that we have to heal within ourselves, we cannot expect to, we cannot expect to give to the West an alternative way of life if we ourselves have not healed ourselves from this disease. Thank you so much.